Hashem Naaseh v'Natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Sunday night Torah Foundations, where the Chovot HaLevavot is teaching us more and more about ourselves than we even know about ourselves. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema and Hatzlacha Rabba for Rabbi Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Avi Mori David ben Esriah, Imi Morati Doris bat Jorah, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to contribute and help us, doing all the amazing things that we're doing behind the scenes, and certainly being very big partners in all the amazing things. I actually met with one of my Talmidim just a few days ago, who kept hearing me say that we're doing big things and there's a big news coming. And he says, Rabbi, I want to see you, and can I see something? So I said, sure. I said, sure. So I, very close Talmid, I gave him a little bit of a taste of what we're working on when we met. And Baruch HaShem, he wrote a check for $18,000, and he says, I'm going to have to get more, and I'm going to have to get my rich friends to get involved now that I see a little bit of what you've been working on. So Rabotai Karim, when I say there's big things coming, I mean it. Anyone that was a partner with us 12 years ago when we started the organization has a extraordinary share of the world to come already set for them. My dear parents that were the biggest contributors back then, they're, Baruch Hashem, look at what they got over the last 12 years. And as I told my Talmid on Friday, the next 12 years will be even bigger than the first 12 years. So take that and think about it, and Be'ezrat Hashem, more good news will come soon. So, Rabotai Karim, how do I know which stage of Teshuva I'm in? This is a very common question. It's a common question that people that are doing Teshuva have, and how do they know which stage of their Teshuva they stand? Where are they at? Now, the answer will depend more on your behavior outside of the shul than inside. And this is because inside the shul, people tend to act at their best, at least in most shuls, while allowing themselves to act more freely outside of the shul. And that's where we really get to see who the person is. The Chovot HaLevavot discusses his understanding of himself before writing this book, from which we're going to actually learn exactly how to assess ourselves and where we really stand. Because humility is not a feeling that a person suddenly has. Rather, it's a good and correct understanding of where you really stand. Now, the Gaon Vilna writes in Sefer Even Shlema, or Even Shlema, that if a person doesn't break his Middot, for what does he exist? From there, we understand that what the Gaon Vilna was trying to tell us was that Avodat Midot, working on our character traits, is the bulk of your goal, your mission, your purpose in this world. And the Chovot HaLevavot tries to give us an understanding of where he stood before writing this book. And he says as follows: when I considered acting on my decision to write this book, I realized that a man like myself was unworthy of authoring such a work. I thought my powers too limited to systemize the material as it should be done, the subject being too difficult for me, my knowledge too limited, and my mind too weak to grasp the ideas. Here we already see how the Chovot HaLevavot is talking about himself. You're not going to find another book like this in our generation or recent generation where the author has an entire introduction discussing the behind the scenes of writing the book, where inside this behind the scenes, inside this introduction, he's doing what sounds to us like insulting himself. I don't have the mental powers to do it. It's too difficult for me. My knowledge is too limited. To a regular person today, sounding, hearing this, reading this, saying, well, listen, if your mental powers are not enough to write this book, why'd you write it? Go take care of your own problems, and then maybe you could write a book. But that's exactly what I was telling you, where real humility is knowing where you really stand. And unfortunately, this is somewhat of a lost character trait among most people who have no concept of what humility is supposed to be and how beneficial it is to your life, both in this world and the next. Furthermore, says the Chovot HaLevavot, I do not possess an elegant style in Arabic, in which the book would have to be written in, as it is a language which is best understood by the majority of my contemporaries. Again, the Chovot HaLevavot is, in essence, saying that his Arabic, which is in today's society, today's English, was not sophisticated enough, was not elaborate enough, was not expensive enough to really write all the details that are necessary for the reader to understand it correctly. Many of the books, though written nearly 1,000 years ago by the Chachamim, were written in Arabic. This was a time where this was one of the leading languages in the world for many of the Jews. The Rambam wrote most of his books in Arabic. Rabbeinu Bachya, of course. Many of the Geonim wrote their books in Arabic. And, of course, times have changed, and today perhaps the leading languages for Jews around the world have turned into English, Spanish, Russian. Surely there's obviously Hebrew, but the point is that the Arabic language, although certainly there are communities that still speak Arabic, it's no longer the leading language. And the Chovot HaLevavot is trying to tell us that the whole point of this book was not really to get notoriety, to get fame, but rather to help people. And what's the best way to help people? To help them in a language that they can understand, that they can read. This is why I tell people all the time when they start learning Gemara, or even if they've been learning Gemara, but they're not at a level where they see and understand Aramaic and Hebrew as if it's their first language, where they can perhaps even understand a word here, a word there, but they don't really understand it as if it's their mother tongue. So I tell them the best gift that HaShem gave this generation is ArtScroll. Why? Because they translated the Talmud, they translated many of the extraordinary Sefarim that the Chachamim have written over the generations, that will give anybody that reads them with an understanding a good foundation of what to do and where to go, rather than trying to break your teeth and your mind to figure out, wait, did I understand this correctly? Did I not understand it correctly? I've actually even met Bachurim, people that have gone to yeshiva, that grew up from, that went to yeshiva their whole life, but still never became proficient in the Aramaic language. So when they understand a few lines in the Talmud, many times and more times than not, they misunderstand it. And if you misunderstand something in such a work, that means that whatever you build on it, whatever conclusions you build on it, whatever questions you have, are usually the wrong questions because you don't understand what you're actually reading. So the Chovot HaLevavot is saying that Arabic is the leading language at this time, nearly 1,000 years ago. And my Arabic is not proficient and expensive enough and elegant enough for me to write this book like it should be written. I fear that I would be undertaking a task which would succeed only in exposing my own shortcomings, and that would be exceeding the bounds of discretion, and therefore I resolved to drop my plans and call off my decision. Up to here is what we're going to learn, where we see the Chovot HaLevavot, at some point, he gave up on the idea of writing this book. Why? Because he analyzed himself. Without sugarcoating, without lying to himself, and without taking things to an extreme where he's thinking, listen, I can do it. I believe in myself. And if you believe in yourself, you'll win, like some people say today. Listen, you can believe in yourself all you want, but if you don't have the wherewithal to do something, all your belief is going to go into the garbage. Sometimes the Satan tries to convince somebody that they could fly just because he wants them to jump off the building and crash. Sometimes the Satan will convince you to do something much bigger than what you really are, just to see you crash. This is where Da'at Torah comes in. This is where having a rabbi comes in that you consult with, because they'll be able to tell you whether it's the Satan or it's HaShem trying to tell you to move forward or not. Now, there's a famous saying that some people are bigger than their sefer. They're bigger than their book. While some Sefarim, some books, are bigger than the sofer. They're bigger than the author. What are such examples? The Kaf HaChaim. The Kaf HaChaim is the name of a book. But the Rav that wrote it, Rav Chaim Sofer, was also, from that point on, known as the Kaf HaChaim. Why? Because the book that he wrote was enormous, made an extraordinary impression on the world, that he became bigger than the book. Same thing with the Chafetz Chaim. The Chafetz Chaim is not really his name. His name is Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. But most people know the Chafetz Chaim, but they won't know who Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan is. Why? Because the book that he wrote made such an impact on the world that it forevermore changed his name to be the Chafetz Chaim. The same goes with the Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Mibavel, who wrote the Ben Ish Chai. In fact, his first book, he did not even write his name in. He wrote a separate, completely different name, like a pen name. I believe it was Nehemiah, which he refers to in his other books. Oh, and I saw this idea in this book written by Nehemiah Sofer to bring attention to this book, because that's where he wrote this idea. But he doesn't say it's me. Why? It all came from humility. But when a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants to raise a person, he'll raise them whether they want to or not. One of the other examples that we saw in the past generation is the Baal Moshe, Moshe Feinstein, who was a giant among giants. But they say that from Moshe ad Moshe, they usually say it about the Rambam. From Moses to Rambam, there wasn't anyone like Moses. But then from the Rambam, from Moshe ad Moshe, lo haya ke Moshe. That from the Rambam till Moshe Feinstein, there was no one like Moshe Feinstein, because his humility was unprecedented. He would be bothered by the community for every single issue with no exception. So much so that people would come to this shul and they would want to be involved in this shul so much, they would just come up with questions to ask the Rav just to be involved in this shul. One guy that wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the deck, each shul would tell people, I'm involved in this shul. Like, you are involved in this shul? Yeah, I asked a question. They waited to the next time to see who really is involved in shul. And he raised his hand. Kvod Harav, I have a question. Yes. What time is it? And Rabbi Moshe Feinstein would answer him, that's a good question. It's right now 12:32. He would answer his question as if he just asked a question that was part of the shul. One time, there was a young kid that was struggling in his Torah learning. And his rabbi told him, listen, I want you to work tonight on giving me clarification of what this verse means. That's all I want you to do. This verse. Okay. The next day, the boy comes to school, and the rabbi asks him, okay, so tell me, what does the verse means? And he gives him the explanation. The rabbi is amazed. Where did you get this explanation? Wow. Now, the rabbi knows that the father is not exactly a Talmid Chacham. So he has to ask, where did you get this explanation? He goes, I got it from Rav Moshe Feinstein. What do you mean? He says, well, I saw in the periodical in the community, they advertised Rav Moshe Feinstein's phone number. So I copied it, and I called him. And I asked Rav Moshe Feinstein to tell me, what does this verse mean? Because my rabbi said that I need to know. Immediately the rabbi got so embarrassed that he took the time of the Gdol Adol to educate one of his students. He ran to the rabbi and he said, Kvod Harav, I'm so sorry that your student. He goes, why? Why are you sorry? No, because this young boy is just having a hard time learning, and I wanted him to understand it just so he could toil a little bit and understand. He goes, yes, I enjoyed it very much, explaining to him what that verse means. That's what I'm here for, to explain to Am Yisrael, what does the Torah say? His humility knew no bounds. This famous story of a woman that would call him every Friday just to ask him, what time does Shabbat come in? She didn't know that he's Rav Moshe Feinstein, the Gdol Adol. She just knew this is the rabbi I call already for 30 years and ask him every Friday, what time does Shabbat come in? When he was in the hospital, in a lot of pain, the Rav was in an enormous amount of pain, and he started crying. And he saw him start crying, and he started talking to HaShem. HaShem, I don't understand. If it's Isuim from love, if it's suffering from love, then I would still be able to learn Torah. But since I'm not able to learn Torah, then this is Isurim, this is suffering as a punishment. But I don't know what I did. And then all of a sudden they start seeing him count the years back. He says the year before, and then the year before, and the year before. And on the machine, everyone is noticing that it's starting to move rapidly. After a few moments, the doctor says, everybody get out of the room. His heart is racing. We have to calm him down right now. Everybody gets out of the room. The doctors give him medicine, calm his heart down. And shortly after, the Rav felt better, was released, went back home, got his strength back. And one day, one of his grandkids came to Moshe Feinstein and said to him, Saba, why were you counting down the years? When? He says, in the hospital, we saw you, you were there, and you started counting the years down. Moshe Feinstein was shocked. Oh, you saw that? I didn't know I was conscious. But since you saw it, I'll explain it to you. He says, when I was in a hospital suffering and I couldn't learn Torah, I started assessing my behavior. Since I can't learn Torah, this cannot be suffering that's from love. It has to be suffering for a sin. But I couldn't figure out which sin did I make that HaShem is rebuking me for. So I started calculating each year. And I went back 60 years. 60 years back I went. And I couldn't find anything until I got to the time where I was a teenager. And when I was a teenager, the Rav of the yeshiva, the Rosh Yeshiva, was Rav Pesach Pruskin. They called him the Rosh Barzel, the head of steel. He was a giant chacham. And he asked all of us a question that was beyond everyone's comprehension. But b'siyata d'ishmaya, I figured it out, and I raised my hand and I said, Kvod Harav, I have an answer. The whole room was silenced. This young boy has an answer? And I started saying the answer, explaining all of the different complications and resolving all of the contradictions, until the Rav told me, that's exactly it. That's the answer. The whole room went wild. Wow, amazing. And at that moment, I had some pride in my heart that I answered the big Rav's question. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu has been waiting for me for 60 years to do tshuva for that pride that I had in my heart when I was just a teenager. But I did not do tshuva, so he gave me a heartache. And now that I've done tshuva, he's removed the heartache. Of course, the grandson could not understand. And he said, Saba, I don't understand. Is it really that big of a sin to have some pride in your heart for answering such a giant Torah question? And to that, Rav Moshe Feinstein smiled at him and said, looked at him, and the boy continued and said, well, Saba, you're the Gdol Ador of America. You do this. Don't you ever have any pride? And he smiled at him and he said, why should I have any pride? This was what I was created for. At another time, he explained to his daughter that saw how much people bother him with all types of questions, some of them simple questions they can figure out on their own, look in the paper, do all types of things. But he saw that her father, the Rav Moshe Feinstein, would never be bothered. Always happily answering questions, always happily helping people. And she asked him, Abba, don't you get upset with all of these people bothering you all day? Little kids, adults, this, that. And he says to her, when I was a young boy, I had some anger in my heart. And I knew that anger comes from gava, comes from arrogance. And therefore I worked on it for the next 36 years to remove it from my heart. So no, I don't get upset. I don't get angry. This is what I was created for. Chachmei Israel, many times people do not understand, unless they have toiled in Torah, they don't really understand the greatness of the Chachamim. And many times, even if they did toil in Torah, they still don't understand the full capacity of the Chacham. The Chafetz Chaim famously prayed that people would not recognize his genius and give him so much honor. He ended up being recognized as a great tzaddik because he never prayed not to be recognized as a great tzaddik, because he never thought that he's a tzaddik. But the truth is, Rabotai, is that when a person has humility, it's not that they don't know that they're smart or they're talented or they have abilities, but rather they know where they stand. They know where they stand, they know where it all comes from. And the Chovot HaLevavot is trying to tell us his perspective of where he stands. And he says this is such a great and important subject that I don't believe that I have the ability and the wherewithal to actually write this book properly. Because such a big topic requires enormous knowledge and powers to really explain it to other people. Because what's the difficulty of writing a book? First off, if you're dealing with a big issue, a big subject, you want to divide it into topics without missing any of the details. And on top of all of that, you have to make sure that everything is clear. Because you could write about a big topic, but you end up writing something that's more general, which misses all of the details. Or you could write about the big topic, include all the details, but it's only understandable to you and to people like you, and not necessarily people that are not in the same level, that are not in the same wavelength of thought. And that's one of the great things about the earlier sages. When they wrote their books, it was very, very different than the books that are written today. For example, if you read a responsa today for someone that was written recently, you'll see that they go back and forth about different topics. They use different type of language. They break things down into many different aspects. In comparison, that if you go back to the Rishonim, you go to the Rambam, you go to the Ramban, you go to Rabbeinu Yonah, you see that the way they write is very, very clear. Now, this may seem like people became smarter, but that's a mistake. Rav Shach, alav Shalom, once said that it would seem to people from their perspective that once we have the resurrection of the dead and all of the tzaddikim return, then we'll have a yeshiva. And the yeshiva, the one that will teach the most difficult boys, meaning the ones that are the most intellectual, the most sophisticated, the high level Bachurim, will be one of the recent Chachamim from the past generation. And then the ones that are a little bit less, perhaps the Marsha from 350 years ago, he's going to teach them because he clarified things further. And of course, the young kids that don't really know that much, at least Rashi will teach them. Rashi from 900 years ago, he didn't go back and forth about different things. He just clarified this is what it means. But of course, we all know it's wrong, says Rav Shach. It cannot be that someone from a recent generation, although a chacham, will be better suited to teach the elite of our generation better than Rashi would. So where is the misunderstanding? The misunderstanding is that people do not realize that the earlier sages, such as Rashi, did not need to break things down in so many different ways in order to clarify it, because he was at such a high level that he was able to clarify it in the most clear language you can possibly get, whereby anyone would understand it. This is the genius of the previous generations. When the Arizal saw that some of his students did not understand the greatness of Rashi that preceded him by nearly 500 years, he told them, I want you to analyze each verse in the Chumash to the point where you're using the least amount of words but the most amount of information. So they wrote, but of course, because of all of the different elaborate explanations, Kabbalistic explanations, it was very lengthy. Each verse would be like half a book. Now Arizal says, no. It must be much shorter, like Rashi. Okay, so they obviously have to condense it and work on it and put more into one word, which requires a whole lot more thought, a whole lot more depth. And after multiple efforts, they eventually condensed it to very short description of each verse. And he says, now go look at what Rashi says. And they see that what Rashi wrote not only included everything they did, but even more. And at that point, they understood the greatness of Rashi. So now the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us that from his perspective, he sees that he's not good enough. He's not smart enough. This is too big of a topic for him. And furthermore, even if I knew the information, I don't know the language well enough. And I fear that this undertaking would simply be an exposing of my own shortcomings. Here we see that the author is not only aware of the greatness of the task that's in front of him, but is already living it. Many times a person may have an idea of what they think is good, of what they think should be done, but they're not necessarily living it. They're not necessarily doing it because they're looking for partners first. This also shows their lack of real conviction in their idea. Here it's obviously quite different. When we compare this state of mind that Rabbeinu Bachya has about himself, and we're talking about a sage from nearly 1,000 years ago, the Gadol Ador, he's not here to pretend for anyone. He's telling you exactly what he feels. He's telling you exactly what he thinks, and he knows that everything he says is true. Certainly we all wish we can be as little as he was, which would be an endless amount of greatness bigger than what we can ever be. But needless to say, he knows where he stands. He's not lying. He's not pretending. He's simply telling you, this is what happened before I wrote the book. Now we know in the end they ended up writing the book because the book is in front of us. But he's telling you, this is what happened. This is what happened. Now what does this have to do with a person that is doing tshuva? When a person watches one of our videos, or as one woman sent me a message on Motzei Shabbat that she saw our film, HaShem took back his millions, and it gave her an extraordinary chizuk, completely different perspective from where she was living her life. Now she has a lot more emunah, and she's very supportive. And thank you, and so on. And Baruch Hashem, we never get enough pleasure from all of these, because Baruch Hashem, they keep coming, and we look forward for many more, because if there are 10 billion people in the world, we'd love for each one of them to get chizuk from the Torah, especially Am Yisrael. It's only a fraction of all of them. But needless to say, anytime somebody watches one of the shulim, one of the films, and gets chizuk out of it, it's always a great day. It's always a great news. But it's always a reminder of how much more we need to pray for HaShem to show it to more people so they can benefit from it the same way. But when people watch the lectures, and then they reach out and they tell us, oh, I'm doing Teshuva now, I decided to start keeping Shabbat, I decided to start becoming modest, start to protect my brit, all types of wonderful things that people took upon themselves. And you see that people start to change. And along the way, they ask more questions, some more, some less. And you see that the people's questions change as they improve, change as they grow. A few months pass, a year passes, 2 years pass. And some people grow rapidly and flourish. Some grow but then hit a wall, a self-made wall, where they think they have done enough. So it's time for them to just be on neutral. But the most unfortunate of all are people that get the inspiration, start growing, hit the wall, and decide to reverse without even realizing they're reversing. How so? There was once a Reform rabbi that came to the Maggid Dubno. And they would always socialize with him, bother him, at some point even tried killing him. And the Maggid Dubno would constantly go to battle with these people, debate them, argue with them, write books, and so on. So Maggid Dubno asked this Reform rabbi, I don't understand. You have a community, people follow you, but I know you don't learn any Torah. So how do you give them answers when they ask you about kashrut, about kosher meat? So the Reform rabbi tells them, well, I just tell them that everything is tarif. Everything's no good. They should be vegetarians. So Maggid Dubno tells him, you remind me, I'll tell you a parable. He had many parables about everything. And he said, you remind me of a guy that he used to go to his rabbi to ask him questions about whether meat was kosher or not kosher. But every time he would have to burden himself to get to the rabbi, ask the question, and then wait for the rabbi to give them the answer. And he said, maybe there's a shortcut. So he went to a different place, and there was a Reform rabbi just like you. And he said, well, what do you do? He said, the Reform rabbi told him, listen, don't you know that the Torah says that the meat of the field is taref? When the meat of the field is taref, give it to the dog. And this Reform rabbi misinterpreted this, manipulated the text in such a way to say, listen, you know what that means, right? That means that in order for you to check whether the meat is taref or not, you give it to the dog to try it. If he eats it, it's taref. If he doesn't eat it, then it's not, then it's kosher. The fool that wants a shortcut says, wow, where have you been? Great idea. Oh, he went back to his community. And a few months later, he went back to his original rabbi. And the rabbi tells him, where have you been? I haven't seen you. You used to come every week, sometimes multiple times a week. But I haven't seen you in a few months. What have you done? No questions for 3 months? He goes, no, actually, Rabbi, I actually went to a different rabbi. And he told me this and that. He told me, okay, so now the dog is the rabbi. He goes, well, no, I don't want the dog anymore. Well, why not? It works for you. Isn't that what you wanted? To avoid coming to me? And, well, the problem is that the dog is too stringent. Everything is tarif. He eats everything. I need someone that's a little more lenient, like you. What do we understand from this? We understand from this that sometimes a person does not understand that their tshuva is not like a test in school where each time you get a question, you get to the next question, and the question you just passed is no longer relevant. You just move on until you finish. Tshuva is not that way. Tshuva is a building process that builds on the preceding step, so much so that if the preceding step was spoiled, then it'll hurt other steps, sometimes the next step, sometimes a step 5 or 10 years from now. Sometimes you may not even realize the significance of your mistake until years pass, when it already becomes too late or too painful. And really, one of the things that you see sometimes is that people do not realize that when the sages said in Pirkei Avot, make yourself a rabbi, they weren't making a suggestion. They were simply telling you that this is the absolute necessity for you to succeed. Because without someone that already possesses Da'at Torah, without someone that already knows where you stand, you're never going to be able to know which direction to go to. One of the examples that I heard from my dear Rav Ephraim is a story about a Rav that dealt with Kiruv, Rav Azriel Tauber. And Rav Azriel Tauber would do Kiruv, would help people with different things. And one day, the Baba Sali, alav Shalom, sent him a message to come visit him. Of course, Rav Azriel went to Netivot, went to go see the Baba Sali. And as soon as he got to the Baba Sali, Baba Sali told him, sit over here. And then he turned around and gave him his back. Rabbi Azriel didn't know what to make of it, so he just sat there quietly. Shortly after, the Rabbanit, the Baba Sali's wife, came into the room and sat with the rabbi. And he started talking to her, making her laugh, socializing with her about different things for a half hour, as if Rabbi Azriel is not even in the room. Number one, it's not comfortable. And number two, he's not really sure what the message is. After a half hour, the Rabbanit gets up and leaves, and the Baba Sali says to him, now you can go. Baba Azriel leaves the room, confused and thinking, why would the Gedol Hador, why would the Tzaddik, why would the Baba Sali invite me all the way here just to sit in the room and see him socializing with his wife? And as the deeper he thought about it, the more he realized, the Rav understands better than me that when you deal with Kiruv, sometimes you deal with different people that have a Shalom Bayit problems, but sometimes those Shalom Bayit problems are self-inflicted as a result of people doing tshuva. Why? Because the guy wants to do tshuva, and all of a sudden he thinks he's too righteous for his wife, so he doesn't want to spend any time with her. He doesn't want to talk to her anymore. All of a sudden she thinks she's more righteous than her husband, so she looks down at him. And all types of complications. The Rav wanted to show me that even the Gedol Hador spends time to make his wife happy. And if he can do it, certainly you, Mr. Baal Tshuva, for a few weeks can also do it. Another story from nearly 30 years ago. Arav Amrami said that one time he was going to a certain shul, and he saw across the street there was a guy with glasses on or some type of thing covering his eyes. He had long peyot, and he was walking with his head down, and someone was holding his hand to walk him to where he was going, to the shul. And Rav Amrami was with another rabbi. He says, who is this? He goes, oh, Kvod Rav, this is a holy Baal Tshuva. Excuse me? He's a holy Baal Tshuva. This guy is an Elui. This guy is special. This is going to be Gdol Ador. He says, what is he doing? He says he took upon himself Shmirat Einayim, to cover his eyes to such an extent that he refuses to look at anything outside. And of course, people want to help him, and they do the chesed for such a tzaddik to show him where he's going. He says, well, how long is he about Tshuva? He says a couple of months only. That's the amazing thing. Look how great he has become in such a short period of time. He says, so how does he have such long peyot? He goes, no, he had long hair, cuckoo and everything. He cut it, so he has long peyot. Rabbi Amrami says, he won't last. Oh, come on, Kvod Rav, why are you saying things like that? He says, it's not possible to become the Chozemi Lublin, who worked on himself for decades to sanctify himself. It's not possible to do it in a couple of months. And to, unfortunately, some people's surprise, Rav Amrami was 100% right. And just a few months later, that so-called Baal Tshuva that couldn't even take looking at society at large to, not only he left that fakeness that he was doing, he became completely secular and became a waiter in one of the most immodest places in Eilat. So why would Rav Amrami say such a thing? Why would he think, why can't someone grow so fast? Because in order to sanctify yourself, in order to elevate yourself, in order to perfect yourself, in fact, even in order to better yourself, it's progress that's step by step. It's not something that can happen overnight. I've had times where I would have to rebuke a student that would tell me, listen, Rabbi, I started fasting a few months ago every Monday and Thursday, and it's really hard for me. Can I stop? And I rebuked him, tell him, who told you to fast? No, but I thought it's good for my tikkun, it's good for your tikkun, not you. Maybe it's good for somebody that's already in it for 20, 30 years. You're about Tshuva for 2 years, Habibi. What are you fasting twice a week for? Who told you to do this? Why didn't you ask me beforehand? Another one tells me, oh, Rabbi, I made a neder that I'm never going to watch such and such. Can you help me break the neder? Who told you to make a neder? Don't you know the Chachamim say only a fool makes a neder? Oh, but I thought it's going to elevate me. You thought. Why are you thinking? How do you know that your thought process is right? You don't know enough to know how to think with a Torah mindset. You just started. 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. You're just a brand new kid. You don't have any Dal Torah. One young woman, Baruch HaShem, discovered our shiurim, did Teshuva. She thought that, since I'm doing everything, I started keeping Shabbat, I'm starting to be Middot, I'm going to go to a seminary. She didn't ask where, she didn't ask why, she just simply disappeared. Almost 5 years later, I hear from her again, telling me She is completely off the derech, doesn't keep anything, not kosher, not Shabbat, not nothing, and her life is in shambles. I said, what happened? I thought you went to a seminary. I thought that my teachings that inspired you initially were no longer enough for you, and you went to higher education. How could it be that you're not even keeping kashrut? There are some goyim that keep kashrut. How are you not keeping kashrut? Oh, it was this, it was that. Oh. What the Chovot HaLevavot is trying to tell us is you have to know where you stand. And if you delude yourself into thinking that you're much more than what you really are, you will fail. Now, how could a person know where they stand? They're not. Unless they have Da'at Torah. The Chovot HaLevavot has Da'at Torah. But you, a new Baal Teshuva, a new convert, 2, 4, 5, 10 years, you don't. And the more difficult that is for you to accept, the more difficult the process of growing closer to HaShem will be. Because ultimately, the greatest thing that a person can possess in their soul, in their heart, in their mind, in order to succeed in doing tshuva and getting closer to Hashem, is to be submissive to Da'at Torah. Simply accept the fact that you don't know. And the more a person rejects it, the more likely they're going to be another one of these stories where they tell you, yeah, I'm doing tshuva, I did this. Okay, well, who's your rabbi? No, I haven't found someone that's good for me yet. Wait, hold on a second. You're doing tshuva, but you don't have a rabbi? What? No one's good enough for you? Rav Ovadia Yosef had a rabbi. Rav Yashiv had a rabbi. The Chafetz Chaim had a rabbi. Rav Moshe Feinstein had a rabbi. Everybody had a rabbi, but you in the year 2026, you don't have a rabbi? Everybody's bad? No one's good for you? They're good for everybody else except you? And that's what happens. When a person thinks that they know better than everyone else, they're not going to find anyone that's sufficient for them. But the worst situations are found in people that think that they have overgrown or outgrown the rabbis that have helped them. And we've spoken about this a number of times, but unfortunately, not enough, because it continues to happen around the world with different people and different rabbis. It's a Satan poison that continues to infiltrate the hearts of people that mean well. But they don't realize that when they started doing tshuva, and they started keeping mitzvot, they started putting on tzitzit, they started putting on a kippah, maybe even decided to grow a little bit of hair on their face. Hopefully, if they're not a woman, that's okay. They started getting closer to Hashem, they started doing mitzvot. But they don't realize that even though they started learning a shiur here, they started growing in Gemara, perhaps they feel like they've outgrowing their rabbi because the rabbi says to read with art scroll, but they said, no, I already understand the Gemara even without art scroll. So the rabbi, he's good for new people. He's good for like the beginners. I need somebody better. So what do they not realize? They don't realize that all of the mitzvot they have taken upon themselves, all of the Torah that's water on their neshama, they've taken upon themselves. All of that spiritual water is just covering the horrible Middot that they have not changed. Meaning, the same horrible character traits they had before they did tshuva. The arrogance, the anger, the stinginess, the pettiness, the whatever, lust, all of that stuff stayed exactly the same. And now that they have all of this extra Torah in their mindset, they figured they're better. They don't realize they've actually become worse. They've actually become worse. Why? Because the Torah that they learned and the mitzvot that they do have not influenced them to change their behavior, to change their acts, to change their Middot. So instead of realizing that they have to become better, they actually start going and using that same Torah, that same mitzvot, that same spiritual water they got to throw it in the face of whoever helps them. Why? Because the same bad character traits they had from before are still there. In fact, Shlomo HaMelech says in Proverbs chapter 17, verse 13, Meshiv ra'a tachat tova lo tamush ra'a mi beto. Someone that returns evil to someone that has done good for them brings upon themselves a curse that evil will not leave their house. Meaning, it doesn't matter what they do, there will always be something bad in it. Why? You expressed the most hated character trait in the eyes of HaShem, which is ungratefulness. You watered your neshama with Torah without actually changing your midot. So instead of the Torah being the Sam Chaim, the potion for life, it becomes Sam Amavet, the potion for death. One woman that has a lot of Shalom Bayit problems reaches out to me from time to time asking me about what to do with her husband, who learns Torah apparently. And I've told her many times that he should not be learning Torah in a kollel because it only makes him worse. He does not believe in Da'at Torah. He does not believe in Talmidei Chachamim. He's a complete apikos, and he's, quite frankly, a very, very nasty person. And the more he learns, the worse he becomes. And this is after years and years of trying to help the situation, and it only gets worse. And sending multiple rabbis and dayanim and rosh kollels, all types of people to help this person. But his arrogance is too big for him to see anyone aside from himself. And she says, what do I do? How long do I need to deal with this husband of mine that keeps changing the Torah and Hashem's rules according to his likings? The answer is, as long as you stay married to this person, this is the only way that's going to be. It's never going to change. Why? Once a person does not believe in Da'at Torah, once a person does not believe that there are other people that know more than him, much more than him, that he in fact does not know enough at all, or even close to enough, once a person decides that they're not going to submit to Talmidei Chachamim, to people that know better than them, then the path from there is only to Gehinnom. Why? Because you simply decided that you know better than the Rambam. You decided that you know better than Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. You decided that you know more than a rabbi that's been learning for 10 times more than you. You decided that you know more. Why? Because one day you said a good story and people laughed or people liked it. So you think that because you said the story better than the rabbi did, or because you remembered something that the rabbi forgot, therefore everything you know is more. This type of arrogance is unfortunately one of the malkodets, one of the traps that the Satan puts in the way of people that are trying to get closer to Hashem, either when they're newly converts or because they're Baalei Teshuva. This is a constant trap that appears and reappears along the road of people. Just earlier today or yesterday, last night, I get an email from someone that's been watching my shulim for several years, many years, and apologizing. Why? Why are they apologizing? They stopped watching my lectures after I exposed the heresy of Ephraim Palvanov, Shem Reshaim Yerkav. They could not accept the fact that this new hero that they found on the internet could be a heretic, even though I wasn't just making it up. I provided sources, even though, even more than my sources, one of Gdolei Israel, Rav Aaron Feldman, said even more than I did, that Palvanov is a heretic. Unfortunately, they were already too deep into the klipa, and they did not want to listen, not to someone that helped them do tshuva, and certainly not to one of Gdolei Hador. They wanted to listen to the new hero on the block, Palvanov the heretic, because they believed that everyone misunderstood him. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu had mercy on this person and their family and woke them up when they saw apparently some recent lectures this heretic made, where he starts canceling mitzvot. He starts canceling the need for prayer, canceling the need for doing other mitzvot. It got to a point where it hit a nerve with this person. Like, what do you mean? We don't need to pray anymore? We don't need to do this stuff? Like, they said, okay, enough is enough. Apparently, Rabbi Reuven was right all along. And Baruch Hashem, they had the humility to go and apologize. And not that I need the apology. I didn't even know this happened to them. But the point is, they realized they're wrong. When a person can admit their mistakes and then fix them, that is an elevation of the soul. That person has gotten better. By humbling yourself, you become better. By thinking you know everything and rejecting everything that doesn't agree with your predisposition, that not only doesn't make you better, it makes you committed to being wrong. Arav Shach, Alav Shalom, was very much against the extremities or the extreme behavior of some Baalei Tshuva that would get excited about Torah and decide to leave everything, completely disconnect and cut off their past life altogether, and decide that they're going to go from being a plumber, a programmer, or whatever they were doing, to being, Avrech in a Kollel, overnight. One of the famous stories was an artist by the name of Yoni Greenstein. And this Yoni Greenstein grew up secular and then started doing tshuva. And he wanted to completely stop doing art. But he wanted to get the permission of Rav Shach, and Rav Shach said, absolutely not. You must continue to draw, continue to paint. Yeah, but Rav, it connects me to the past. He goes, don't run away from your past. Sanctify your past. Find a way to use your past in order to make something holy. Because if you cut off your past altogether and go into never land that you're not familiar with, you're going to break. You're going to break. It'll last 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, but eventually you'll break. Why? It's too far removed. It's too far removed from who you really are. If Hashem put that in your path, even though you were secular at the time, that means that you can use that talent, that ability, for your future as a religious person. You just have to find a way to sanctify your past instead of running away from your past. When a person wants to succeed in getting closer to Hashem by doing tshuva, rule number 1 for success is aseh lecha rav. Make yourself a rabbi. It doesn't say, Rabbi, make yourself talmidim. The rabbi doesn't need to choose you. You need to choose the rabbi that you're going to listen to everything they say. They say right, you go right. You say left, you go left. They say up, you go up. They say down, you go down. This is the most difficult step of tshuva. Why? Because this requires a person to submit to someone without actually understanding why they're submitting. Because really, from the perspective of a new person who does not know Torah and does not know the greatness of the Torah, they cannot measure the greatness of this rabbi's Torah and their knowledge. So what are they measuring against? They're measuring their rabbi, their Talmid Chacham, against what they're familiar with. What are they familiar with? How they can measure themselves against their colleagues. Who has more money, who has a nicer car, who has a bigger house, who's in better shape, who has a better diet, who looks better. So when they look at the rabbi, he's like, no, listen, I dress much better than him. I got a $35,000 watch. The rabbi's wearing a Casio that you could buy at a dollar store. I drive a $250,000 car. The rabbi is riding a $15,000 car, or is maybe a bicycle. I'm in best shape. I go to the gym twice a day. The rabbi is overweight by at least 50 pounds. So they're measuring the rabbi like they're measuring their colleagues. So certainly they're never going to measure the rabbi correctly, because they don't understand the significance of Torah. They don't understand how much more knowledge the rabbi knows about you that you don't know. Even if he just met you, he already knows more about you. If he's a Talmid Chacham, he already knows more about you and all of the different little intricate details that come along with it. Why? Because the Torah encompasses every aspect of life, most of which the new person that has not learned Torah does not even know exist. They don't know what path is ahead of them. They certainly know what obstacles are ahead of them. So when a person wants to actually succeed in doing tshuva, they have to make themselves a rabbi, but they also have to agree to the fact that they don't really understand the value of the rabbi until many years pass. In fact, the Gemara in Masechet Megillah says that you won't understand all of what your rabbi has told you until 40 years later. From where do we learn this from? Am Yisrael did not appreciate Moshe Rabbeinu until he died 40 years after he became their rabbi. Only then did they realize what he did for them in Mitzrayim and gave them the Torah and all of the lessons, and it took them many, many more years to understand further. So when a person is not willing to put their head down and realize, you know what? He knows better of which is the best path for me. Even though I don't understand how, I don't understand when, I'm simply going to put my head down and just simply say, yes, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do my best. If I fail, I try again. If I fail, I say this, I say that. This is really the key to success. Unfortunately, the number of people that are willing to do that is very few. And they become fewer and fewer in this generation because arrogance is one of the things that is celebrated in our current generation. In the previous generation, people were much more humble. People naturally were much more humble. Arrogance always existed, but the natural inclination of most people was more towards humility in past generations than today, especially since poverty was much more common and all the difficulties and sufferings were much more standard. Today there's an illusion. There's an illusion in the world that is called social media, where people show you pictures of all their highlights. They don't show you how many problems happened before the highlight and how many problems will happen after they show the highlight of their dinner, their highlight of their wedding, their highlight of some event. They don't show you all the problems before and after. They don't show you they yelled at the kids and embarrassed themselves in public 2 seconds before they took that cute family picture. They don't show you that when they were showing you the food, that 2 seconds after they took the picture, they cursed out the waiter because he spilled a bunch of stuff on their dress. They don't show you that. They just show you, I ate this dish and I paid $4,000 for it. I went to this vacation and I spent $18,000 for it. And they don't show you all the things that happened before and after. So there's an illusion. There's one big illusion on the world. When the sages said it's Alma de Shika, it's the world of lies, they were not exaggerating in any way, shape, or form. The more you see what is actually behind the scenes in this world, the more you see how much everything is a lie. In business, people lie as a standard. In politics, lying is a first language. In friendship, that whole word is a lie. Why? Because people don't even know what friends are to be friends. They don't even know what a friend is supposed to be friends. People tell me all the time, oh, listen, Rabbi, I got 30 friends, I got 15 friends. You have 15 friends? Maybe you have 15 people that are willing to answer the phone when you call them as long as you're not asking for something, but you don't have 15 friends. How do I know? I don't even need to know your 15 friends. I know you don't have 15 friends. It's not possible to have 15 friends. Talk to any old man. Talk to any old woman. You're lucky if you have one real friend in your life. But you think you have 15 friends. Why? Because you live in an immature Alma de Shika, world of lies. World of lies. And unfortunately, people are not willing to face the reality that it's all a lie. Now again, this is not to become pessimistic. This is not to become negative in any way, shape, or form. Certainly, it's nice to know certain people that are good people, to spend time with them, to talk to them, to share experiences with them. All of those things are good, but take everything in perspective. Don't live in illusion. Don't fall into the lie. Don't fall into the lie. I spoke to somebody that I know from Eretz Yisrael today, and unfortunately, this person is a really, really good person, but they've had the influence of some, let's just call it, certain people that are in politics for the last several years. And I already can see that they don't realize that they're being influenced by politicians. Not that they're influencing their behavior, becoming bad people, but simply their mindset already has certain poisonous things that come from the world of lies of politics. And people simply do not realize we are in the world of lies. Now, for the world to be a liar is one thing. That you can't change. What you can change is not to believe the lie yourself. Not to lie to yourself and think that you are better than what you are, you know more than what you know, and simply reject the source of truth from wherever it comes from. In the Torah, Kadosh Baruch Hu told us the truth can come from anywhere. Even the donkey of Bilam had the truth for a moment, and therefore he's quoted in the Torah. Why? HaShem is trying to tell us the truth is the truth. So now when you have a mission to get closer to HaShem, to go to heaven, to live a better life, you need to know, first thing first, the truth is, you have no clue what you're doing. Your friends also don't have a clue. Your colleagues, anyone that's not a Talmid Chacham, does not have a clue where you're going and what you're doing and what you need. And in fact, even if you pick the wrong Talmid Chacham, you're also not going to go in the right direction. Why? Because that person that's Talmid Chacham is not just someone that knows a lot of Torah. They also have to know you. They have to know your weaknesses, your strength, what's right, what's left for you. If you think that it's all a one-size-fits-all, it's not going to work that way, and you'll be sadly disappointed. In essence, what we're seeing here, Rabotai Karim, is the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us the difficulty he is having evaluating himself through the Da'at Torah that he already has. He is telling us this is such an extraordinary subject to teach people about how to inspect your inner heart is so extraordinary, it's so important that you need to be a giant to explain it. And I don't think I am. For Gdol Ador to know himself well enough to say such a thing, it behooves us to start looking at the mirror and seeing the real person that we actually see in the reflection. And stop lying to ourselves, thinking that just because we did a few good things, therefore we are permanently good, we're faultless, we know better, Because one of the most disgusting things that you can see in life altogether is when people take a few good steps, they start doing tshuva, they start going in the right direction, and then as a result, they gain arrogance and start expressing that arrogance by looking down at other fellow Jews. Oh, look at that, he's a mechalel Shabbat. Oh, look at her. Yeah, she doesn't know what she's doing. She's a Baal tshuva. She's a Baal tshuva. And what are you, Chamor? What are you? What, 5 years ago you made tshuva? Well, you think you're any different? No, why, Rabbi? She doesn't know anything. She's still figuring out how to not eat milk and meat. What are you talking about? I already learned Talmud, Rabbi. I learned Talmud. You're a chamor with bigger ears. What are you talking about? If you're looking down at a fellow Jew that's trying to become better, you're a chamor with bigger ears. Nothing has changed. With or without the Talmud. The whole point of the Talmud is for you to become a better quality person. If you've learned Talmud and you're still a chamor, nevela zchucha tova mimecha. Never get to the point of looking down at somebody that's trying to do better. If your tshuva has made you mean to other people that are trying to do the same thing, you have not even begun to do tshuva. The Torah is a potion of poison for you. Because the whole goal of the Torah is for you to become better. A better version of yourself. Not somebody else. A better version of yourself. That's the whole goal of the Torah. And since you do not know how to do that, you need the rabbi that's going to tell you which direction to go if you're willing to listen. If you're not willing to listen, then you're wasting your time and the rabbi's time. But either way, Rabotai Karim, what the Chovot HaLevavot is trying to tell us here, don't get ahead of yourself and think that your ride is finished. Don't get ahead of yourself and think that you're done. You have a long way to go. How do I know? You're still alive. And whoever is still alive in this world still has a whole lot more to do to better themselves, to improve themselves, and the world around them. If you are on that path of bettering yourself every day, instead of lying to yourself that you're already doing enough, then you'll get better. You'll get better, and you'll become better. But if you think you've already done enough to the point where everyone is beneath you, or most people are beneath you, or really anyone is beneath you, perhaps you should watch the series we made called Igeret Aramban, where the Ramban, Nachmanides, writes a letter to his son and explains to us where you really need to be as a starting point. Perhaps you should spend the next few weeks watching that series and then start taking your tshuva a little more seriously. Because once we start taking the tshuva more seriously, it becomes the potion of life that's so great that it actually influences us to become happier, to become more optimistic, to become a better influence on other people without even saying a single word. Simply, your energy starts influencing other people in a positive way. But if you're constantly harping on everything that's negative about everyone else, everything that's negative about everything else, then guess what? You're missing the whole point. The Torah is supposed to bring good. Good includes happiness. Good includes optimism. Good includes better version of yourself. And good is addictive. Once you have it, you'll know that that's what you have. Be'ezrat Hashem, we will all succeed in all of this. Because the last thing that anyone wants is to be like the fox. The fox, in one of the many parables that Rabbi Meir Baal HaNes said, where there was a fox, that fox is known as one of the clever animals. And the fox saw that there's a vineyard with delicious fruits. Oh, he wanted it. But how could I get there? He saw that there's a little hole. He tried to get through the hole, but it was too small. And Rabbi Meir Baal says, this fox was so committed to getting into that vineyard, to getting those grapes, that he decided to fast for 3 days. He fasted for 3 days. He got smaller and smaller, enough to the point where he was able to get inside that little hole and into the vineyard. As soon as he got to the vineyard, of course, he was celebrating. Ha! Yes! I did it! I got here! And he started eating everything he possibly could. Whatever was in front of him, no one was in his way. And for the next 3 days, he ate with no limitations. After 3 days, he's had enough. He wants to go back home. He goes back to the hole, and of course, to no one's surprise, he can't fit in the hole. He can't fit in the hole. How can I get out of here? He realizes in order to fit through the hole, he has to fast. And he fasts for the next 3 days. Eventually, he gets small enough to be able to fit through the hole. And he goes through the hole, and then he turns around and looks at the vineyard, and he says, vineyard, vineyard, the way I came into you is the way I left you. From here, the sages teach us, there's a person that comes into this world in one way and leaves the same way, because their entire focus is simply to enjoy the vineyard, not realizing that the way you came into this world is the way you're going to leave it, if that's all you focus on. You may enjoy the fruit for a few moments, but eventually you'll have to suffer getting it out of your system. The same concept goes with Teshuva. If a person goes into the world of Torah, into servitude of HaShem, into getting closer to HaShem, without fixing their character traits, then guess what? The way they came into the world of Torah is the same way they will be on the way out. The secret is, instead of focusing on temporary pleasure, be more clever than the fox. Take the grapes, throw them over the gate. Put them through the hole. Save some for later. In the world of Torah, don't just think about the temporary pleasure. Don't just think about something that's momentary. Think about, what can I do today to make tomorrow better? What can I do today that could elevate me in a week from now, in a month from now? What could I change about yesterday that I did today so tomorrow is better? The more you focus on the rest of your life and on eternity, the more you'll realize that you need Da'at Torah much more than people realize, because that's the only way you'll be able to navigate on the path and enter the world of Torah safely and leave this world even better than you came in. Thank you very much for learning with me. May HaShem give each and every single one of us the strength to overcome the Yetzer Hara that's constantly trying to convince us that we've done enough, and encourage us to do better. And Be'ezrat Hashem, we will all succeed. Anyone that wants to support, be partners in all the amazing things that we're doing, you could donate on our website, be'ezrathashem.org. And also for those of you that have the AI Rabbi app, you could check also the new updates on the AI Rabbi website. And there's some upgrades on the app as well. Some are already released in the last 48 hours, and some will be released, Be'ezrat Hashem, in the next couple of days, if not sooner. Be'ezrat Hashem, we're just simply waiting for Apple's approval. But Baruch Hashem, a lot of amazing things have come out with AI Rabbi. It's and much more is coming out very, very soon, Be'ezrat Hashem. Thank you very much, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll learn again later this week.
This is not an award. It's much more than that. What is it? It's the Candid Platinum Seal of Transparency. There are 1.8 million nonprofits in the United States. Less than 1% of them are recognized at the highest tier of financial program transparency of Platinum. Baruch HaShem, for the third year in a row, Be'ezrat Hashem is one of them. What is it? This candid Platinum seal of transparency is where an organization publishes publicly not just its financials and governance, but verified program outcomes, numbers that have to be reproven every single year. Most nonprofits our size don't even apply. The documentation is demanding, the accountability is uncomfortable, but we pursue it because you deserve to know exactly what your support is doing. What did your support do in the year 2025? Here's what your support did this past year. And it was verified by Candid. 238,000 Jewish individuals were fed or financially assisted. Over 15,000 Torah lectures and 500 Torah films were produced and distributed across 23 channels and 15 languages. 280,000 free Sefarim by Rabbi Kachlon and myself were distributed worldwide for free, up from 150,000 the year before. 2.3 million outreach materials were given out free of charge, like the Asher Yatzar and USBs, CDs. All of this, Baruch Hashem, was funded almost entirely by individual donors, just like yourself. No foundation grants, just people like you who watched our videos, got inspired, and decided to do something with us. Why do we pursue this? In Judaism, we say that a person is judged not by what they do once, but what they do consistently. Earning platinum once shows that you can prepare a good report. Earning it 3 years in a row proves it's how we actually operate. When you give Be'ezrat Hashem your donations, you're not just trusting us. You're trusting a system that's been audited, verified, and made public 3 times over. And your trust is something that we hold very dear. We don't take it lightly. One of the most amazing things we have now is the kiruvstore.org, where people can order free books and other materials. But in addition to that, we also have real-time numbers of what we've done. So you could actually see that the numbers have gone up much more since this report was officially granted to us last year. If you want to be part of what we're building, go to be'ezrathashem.org/donate. The link is going to be in the description. And you want to see exactly where every dollar is being used. Our full candid profile is also going to be linked below. See it for yourself. And if you know someone who's been waiting to support a Torah outreach organization that actually proves what it does with people's donations, share this video with them. Thank you for the 3 years of trust, and Be'ezrat Hashem, we keep going. When we do this together.